Get comfortable, ladies and gentlemen. Open your ears, sit back and relax, and get set for an unbelievable revelation tonight. You're going to want copies of this tape of The Hour of the Time. I'm William Cooper. Ah, yes, the seed that lies beneath the snow in the springtime becomes the rose. I'm going to begin tonight's broadcast, ladies and gentlemen, by reading a portion of the introduction of a book entitled Born in Blood by John J. Robinson, The Lost Secrets of Freemasonry. Now, you should seek out this book, purchase it, and read it. It is a wonderful addition to your own library. And I begin now. Quote, "The research behind this book was not originally intended to reveal anything about Freemasonry or the Knights Templar. Its objective had been to satisfy my own curiosity about certain unexplained aspects of the Peasants' Revolt in England in 1381. A savage uprising that saw upwards of 100,000 Englishmen march on London. They moved in uncontrolled rage, burning down manor houses, breaking open prisons, and cutting down any who stood in their way. One unsolved mystery of that revolt was the organization behind it. For several years, a group of disgruntled priests of the lower clergy had traveled the towns, preaching against the riches and corruption of the church. During the months before the uprising, secret meetings had been held throughout central England by men weaving a network of communication. After the revolt was put down, rebel leaders confessed to being agents of a, quote, great society, unquote, said to be based in London. So very little is known of that alleged organization that several scholars have solved the mystery simply by deciding that no such secret society ever existed. Another mystery was the concentrated and especially vicious attacks on the religious order of the Knights Hospitaller of St. John, now known as the Knights of Malta. Not only did the rebels seek out their properties for vandalism and fire, but their prior was dragged from the Tower of London to have his head struck off and placed on London Bridge, to the delight of the cheering mob. There was no question that the ferocity unleashed on the crusading Hospitallers had a purpose behind it. One captured rebel leader, when asked the reasons for the revolt, said, quote, "First and above all, the destruction of the Hospitallers," unquote. What kind of secret society could have had that special hatred as one of its primary purposes? A desire for vengeance against the Hospitallers was easy to identify in the rival crusading order of the Knights of the Temple of Solomon in Jerusalem. The problem was that those Knights Templar had been completely suppressed almost 70 years before the Peasants' Revolt, following several years during which the Templars had been imprisoned, tortured, and burned at the stake. After issuing the decree that put an end to the Templar order, Pope Clement V had directed that all of the extensive properties of the Templars should be given to the Hospitallers. Could a Templar desire for revenge actually have survived underground for 3 generations? There was no incontrovertible proof, yet the only evidence suggests the existence of just one secret society in 14th century England. Just one. The society that was or would become the Order of Free and Accepted Masons. There appeared to be no connection, however, between the revolt and Freemasonry, except for the name or title of its leader. He occupied the center stage of English history for just 8 days, and nothing is known of him except that he was the supreme commander of the rebellion. He was called Walter the Tyler, and it seemed at first to be mere coincidence that he bore the title of the enforcement officer of the Masonic Lodge. In Freemasonry, the Tyler, who must be a master mason, is the sentry, the sergeant-at-arms, and the officer who screens the credentials of visitors who seek entrance to the lodge. In remembrance of an earlier, more dangerous time, his post is just outside the door of the lodge room, where he stands with a drawn sword in his hand even to this day. I was aware that there had been many attempts in the past to link the Freemasons with the Knights Templar, but never with success. The fragile evidence advanced by proponents of that connection had never held up, sometimes because it was based on wild speculation, and at least once because it had been based on a deliberate forgery. But despite the failures to establish that link, it just will not go away, and the time-shrouded belief in some relationship between the two orders remains as one of the more durable legends of Freemasonry. That is entirely appropriate, because all of the various theories of the origins of Freemasonry are legendary. Not one of them is supported by any universally accepted evidence. Here I break from reading from the introduction of the book and interject a comment here. There was never any universally accepted evidence until you hear what you're going to hear tonight, produced by John Galt, an agent of the Citizens Agency for Joint Intelligence. The connection, dear listeners, is in the genealogy of the families of the elite. You are going to be amazed, and now I continue from the introduction to Born in Blood. I was not about to travel down that time-worn trail and decided to concentrate my efforts on digging deeper into the history of the Knights Templar to see if there was any link between the suppressed knights and the secret society behind the Peasants' Revolt. In doing so, I thought that I would be leaving Freemasonry far behind, and I couldn't have been more mistaken. Like anyone curious about medieval history, I had developed an interest in the Crusades, and perhaps more than just an interest. Those holy wars hold an appeal that is frequently as romantic as it is historical, and in my travels I had tried to drink in the atmosphere of the narrow defiles in the mountains of Lebanon through which Crusader armies had passed, and had sat staring at the castle ruins around Sidon and Tyre, trying to hear the clashing sounds of attack and defense. I had marveled at the walls of Constantinople, and had strolled the arsenal of Venice, where Crusader fleets were assembled. I had sat in the round church of the Knights Templar in London, trying to imagine the ceremony of its consecration by the Patriarch of Jerusalem in 1185, more than 300 years before Columbus set sail west to the Indies. The Templar Order was founded in Jerusalem in 1118 in the aftermath of the First Crusade. Its name came from the location of its first headquarters on the site of the ancient Temple of Solomon. Helping to fulfill a desperate need for a standing army in the Holy Land, the Knights of the Temple soon grew in numbers, in wealth, and in political power. They also grew in arrogance, and their Grand Master, de Redfort, was a key figure in the mistakes that led to the fall of Jerusalem in 1187. The Latin Christians managed to hold on to a narrow strip of territory along the coast, where the Templars were among the largest owners of the land and the fortifications. Finally, the enthusiasm for sending men and money to the Holy Land waned among the European kingdoms, which were preoccupied with their own wars against each other. By 1296, the Egyptian Sultan was able to push the resident Crusaders along with the military orders into the sea. The Holy Land was lost, and the defeated Knights Templar moved their base to the island kingdom of Cyprus, dreaming of yet one more crusade to restore their past glory. As the Templars planned a new crusade against the infidel, King Philip IV of France was planning his own private crusade against the Templars. He longed to be rid of his massive debts to the Templar Order, which had used its wealth to establish a major international banking operation. Philip wanted the Templar treasure to finance his continental wars against Edward I of England. After 2 decades of fighting, England on one side and the Holy Roman Church on the other, 2 unrelated events gave Philip of France the opportunity he needed. Edward I died, and his deplorably weak son took the throne of England as Edward II. On the other front, Philip was able to get his own man on the throne of Peter as Pope Clement V. When word arrived on Cyprus that the new pope would mount a crusade, the Knights Templar thought that their time of restoration to glory was at hand. Summoned to France, their aging Grand Master, Jacques de Molay, went armed with elaborate plans for the rescue of Jerusalem. In Paris, he was humored and honored until the fatal day. At dawn, on Friday, the 13th of October, in the year 1307, every Templar in France was arrested and put in chains on Philip's orders. Their hideous torture for confessions of heresy began immediately. When the Pope's orders to arrest the Templars arrived at the English court, young Edward II took no action at all. He protested to the pontiff that the Templars were innocent. Only after the Pope issued a formal bull on November the 22nd in the year 1307 was the English king forced to act. In January, in the year 1308, Edward finally issued orders for the arrest of the Knights Templar in England, but the 3 months of warning had been put to good use. Many of the Templars had gone underground, while some of those arrested managed to escape. Their treasure, their jeweled reliquaries, even the bulk of their records, had totally disappeared. In Scotland, the papal order was not even published. Under those conditions, England, and especially Scotland, became targeted havens for fugitive Templars from continental Europe, and the efficiency of their concealment spoke to some assistance from outside, or from each other. The English throne passed from Edward II to Edward III, who bequeathed the crown to his 10-year-old grandson, who, as Richard II watched from the Tower as the peasants' revolt exploded throughout the city of London. Much had happened to the English people along the way. Incessant wars had drained most of the king's treasury, and corruption had taken the rest. A third of the population had perished in the Black Death, and famine exacted further tolls. The reduced labor force of farmers and craftsmen found that they could earn more for their labor, but their increased income came at the expense of land-owning barons and bishops, who were not prepared to tolerate such a state of affairs. Laws were passed to reduce wages and prices to pre-plague levels, and genealogies were searched to reimpose the bondage of serfdom and villeinage on men who thought themselves free. The king's need for money to fight his French wars inspired new and ingenious taxes. The oppression was coming from all sides, and the pot of rebellion was brought to the boil. Religion didn't help either. The landowning church was as merciless a master as the landowning nobility. Religion would have been a source of confusion for the fugitive Templars as well. They were a religious body of warrior monks who owed allegiance to no man on earth except the Holy Father, according to the Holy Father, but according to the Templars in secret, their allegiance was only to themselves. When their Pope turned on them, chained them, beat them, he broke their link with God. In 14th century Europe, there was no pathway to God except through the Vicar of Christ on earth. If the Pope rejected the Templars, and the Templars rejected the Pope, they had to find a new way to worship their God, at a time when any variation from the teachings of the established church was blasted as heresy. That dilemma called to mind the central tenet of Freemasonry, which requires only that a man believe in a supreme being, with no requirements as to how he worships the deity of his choice. In Catholic Britain, such a belief would have been a crime, but it would have accommodated the fugitive Templars who had been cut off from the universal church. In consideration of the extreme punishment for heresy, such an independent belief also made sense of one of the more mysterious of Freemasonry's old charges, the ancient rules that still govern the conduct of the fraternity. The charge says that no Mason should reveal the secrets of a brother that may deprive him of his life and property. That connection caused me to take a different look at the Masonic old charges. They took on new direction and meaning when viewed as a set of instructions for a secret society created to assist and protect fraternal brothers on the run and in hiding from the church. That characterization made no sense in the context of a medieval guild of stonemasons, the usual claim for the roots of Freemasonry. It did make a great deal of sense, however, for men such as the fugitive Templars, whose very lives depended upon their concealment. Nor would there have been any problem in finding new recruits over the years ahead. There were to be plenty of protesters and dissidents against the church among future generations. The rebels of the peasants' revolt proved that when they attacked abbeys and monasteries, and when they cut the head off the Archbishop of Canterbury, the leading Catholic prelate in England. The fugitive Templars would have needed a code such as the old charges of Masonry, but the working stonemaces clearly did not. It had become obvious that I needed to know more about the ancient order of free and accepted Masons. The extent of the Masonic material available at large public libraries surprised me, as did the fact that it was housed in the Department of Education and Religion. Not content with just what was generally available to the public, I asked to use the library in the Masonic Temple in Cincinnati, Ohio. By the way, folks, Cincinnati, Ohio is an extremely important location in this country, the United States. I told the gentleman there that I was not a Freemason, but wanted to use the library as part of my research for a book that would probably include a new examination of the Masonic order. His only question to me was, quote, "Will it be fair?" unquote. I assured him that I had no desire or intention to be anything other than fair, to which he replied, quote, "Good enough," unquote. I was left alone with the catalog and the hundreds of Masonic books that lined the walls. I also took advantage of the publications of the Masonic Service Association at Silver Springs, Maryland. Later, as my growing knowledge of Masonry enabled me to sustain a conversation on the subject, I began to talk to Freemasons. At first, I wondered how I would go about meeting 15 or 20 Masons, and if I could meet them, would they be willing to talk to me? The first problem was solved as soon as I started asking friends and associates if they were Masons. There were 4 in one group I had known for about 5 years, and many more among men I had known for 20 years and more, without ever realizing that they had any connection with Freemasonry. As for the second part of my concern, I found them quite willing to talk, not about the secret passwords and hand grips, by then I already knew them, but about what they had been taught concerning the origins of Freemasonry and its ancient old charges. They were as intrigued as I about the possibilities of discovering the lost meanings of words, symbols, and ritual for which no logical explanation was available, such as why a Master Mason is told in his initiation rites that, quote, "This degree will make you a brother to pirates and corsairs," unquote. And folks, I'll explain that to you a little later. We agreed that unlocking the secrets of those Masonic mysteries would contribute most to unearthing the past, because the loss of their true meanings had caused the ancient terms and symbols to be preserved intact, less subject to change over the centuries or by adaptations to new conditions. Among those lost secrets were the meanings of words used in the Masonic rituals, words like Tyler, Cohen, Dugard, and Jewess. Masonic writers have struggled for centuries without success to make those words fit with their preconceived conviction that Masonry was born in the English-speaking guilds of medieval stonemasons. Now I would test the possibility that there was indeed a connection between Freemasonry and the French-speaking Templar order by looking for the lost meanings of those terms, not in English, but in medieval French. The answers began to flow, and soon a sensible meaning for every one of the mysterious Masonic terms was established in the French language. It even provided the first credible meaning for the name of Hiram Abiff, the murdered architect of the Temple of Solomon, who is the central figure of Masonic ritual. The examination established something else as well. It is well known that in 1362 the English courts officially changed the language used for court proceedings from French to English. So the French roots of all the mysterious terms of Freemasonry confirmed the existence of that secret society in the 14th century, the century of the Templar suppression and the peasants' revolt. With that encouragement, I addressed other lost secrets of Masonry: the circle and mosaic pavement on the lodge room floor, gloves and lambskin aprons, the symbol of the compass and the square, even the mysterious legend of the murder of Hiram Abiff. The rule, customs, and traditions of the Templars provided answers to all of those mysteries. Next came a deeper analysis of the old charges of ancient Masonry that define a secret society of mutual protection. What the, quote, lodge, unquote, was doing was assisting brothers in hiding from the wrath of church and state, providing them with money, vouching for them with the authorities, even providing the, quote, lodging, unquote, that gave Freemasonry the unique term for its chapters and their meeting rooms. There remained no reasonable doubt in my mind that the original concept of the secret society that came to call itself Freemasonry had been born as a society of mutual protection among fugitive Templars and their associates in Britain, men who had gone underground to escape the imprisonment and torture that had been ordered for them by Pope Clement V. Their antagonism toward the Church was rendered more powerful by its total secrecy. The suppression of the Templar order appeared to be one of the biggest mistakes the Holy See has ever made. In return, Freemasonry has been the target of more angry papal bulls and encyclicals than any other secular organization in Christian history. Those condemnations began just a few years after Masonry revealed itself in 1717 and grew in intensity, culminating in the bull Humanum Genus, promulgated by Pope Leo XIII in 1884. In it, the Masons are accused of espousing religious freedom, the separation of church and state, the education of children by laymen, and the extraordinary crime of believing that people have the right to make their own laws and to elect their own government. Quote, according to the new principles of liberty, unquote. You see, folks, and this is an aside, all of our forefathers who established this country were Freemasons, and their intent is spelled out in Latin on the reverse of the Great Seal of the United States of America, where it plainly says, Novus Ordo Seclorum, the New World Order. And I will interpret all of the meaning of the symbols on that great seal according to their true meaning, and not the meaning that you will read in certain disinformation books written by Freemasons to steer you down the wrong road. Such concepts are identified along with the Masons as part of the kingdom of Satan. The document not only defines the concerns of the Catholic Church about Freemasonry at that time, but in the negative, so clearly defines what Freemasons believe that I have included the complete text of that papal bull as an appendix to this book, and I urge you all to get this book and read it. Finally, it should be added that the events described here were part of a great watershed of Western history. The feudal age was coming to a close. Land and the peasant labor on it had lost its role as the sole source of wealth. Merchant families banded into guilds and took over whole towns with charters as municipal corporations. Commerce led to banking and investment, and towns became power centers to rival the nobility in wealth and influence. The universal church, which had fought for a position of supremacy in a feudal context, was slow to accept changes that might affect that supremacy. Any material disagreement with the church was called heresy, the most heinous crime under heaven. The heretic not only deserved death, but the most painful death imaginable. Some dissidents run for the woods and hide, while others organize. In the case of the fugitive Knights Templar, the organization already existed. They possessed a rich tradition of secret operations that had been raised to the highest level through their association with the intricacies of Byzantine politics, the secret ritual of the assassins and the Rashaniya, and the intrigues of the Moslem courts, which they met alternately on the battlefield or at the conference table. The Church, in its bloody rejection of protest and change, provided them with a river of recruits that flowed for centuries. More than 600 years have passed since the suppression of the Knights Templar, but their heritage lives on in the largest fraternal organization ever known. And so the story of those tortured crusading knights, of the savagery of the peasants' revolt, and of the lost secrets of Freemasonry becomes the story of the most successful secret society in the history of the world. I've got to take a break, folks. Don't go away. I'll be right back after this very short pause.
When a star is born, it possesses a gift or two.
Spurned by God in the form of the Vicar of Christ on earth, the Pope, and spurning God in their turn, the Knights Templars banded together in secret and formed what was to become known as Freemasonry. Now the legend goes that Freemasonry sprang up from ancient stonecutters' guilds and the men who built the stone buildings of the age. But Freemason actually comes from the French, Free Mason, which literally means the sons of light. Which light? Well, certainly in researching the problem, it is not the light of Christ. It is the light of the fallen angel of light. For when they were forsaken by the church, by Christ's vicar on earth, the Pope, they spurned God and turned to Lucifer. They held to the Luciferian philosophy that the gift of intellect by Lucifer through his agent Satan would in its turn make man God. These men were always on the run. They took the hidden Templar wealth and built a financial empire that stands to this day as the most powerful on the earth. Jews who had traditionally been persecuted throughout Europe flocked to the hidden temple. For there they could believe as they wished and worship whatever god they wished, for all were welcome. Many of the Templars running to ground flocked to England and to Scotland, where they fought for Robert the Bruce, who was engaged in an intense battle with the King of England. Now, let me regress just a little bit. King William the Lion, who was born in 1165 and died in 1214, had a daughter, Isabel of Scotland. Well, Isabel married a certain Robert Rose. Robert Rose was a Knight Templar who was heavily involved in the first efforts and was very successful at international banking. Plus, he established the first overt and covert international intelligence gathering organization, which all subsequent intelligence organizations have been based upon since. His son, Sir William Roos, and his daughter Lucy Roos figure prominently in the story to follow. Lucy married Sir Robert Plumpton. They sired two children, Sir William Plumpton and Alice Plumpton. During this period of time, this family, as the Knights Templar were going to ground, and the male progeny of this family always followed their father's footsteps and entered into the order. They established in secret the Scottish Rite of Freemasonry, and may have had a significant role in the establishment, for intelligence reasons, of the order known as the Ancient Order of the Rose and Cross. Now, Alice Plumpton married Sir John Boteler. They gave birth to a daughter, Alice Boteler, who then married John Gerard, who had a child, Constance, who married Sir Alex Standish. The following children issued from that marriage: Ralph Standish, Sir Alex Standish, Roger Standish, and Alice Standish, who then married James Prescott. The children of this marriage were Roger Prescott, Ralph Prescott, John Prescott, and Captain Jonathan Prescott. Jonathan Prescott married Rebecca Buckley. They had two children, Abel Prescott and Lucy Prescott, and Lucy married Jonathan Fay. They sired three children, Samuel Prescott Phillips Fay, Samuel Howard Fay, and Harriet Eleanor Fay. Harriet married Reverend James Smith Bush, son of merchant Obadiah Bush. Their son, Samuel Prescott Bush became the president of Buckeye Steel Castings Company of Ohio, a pioneer family of Franklin, Ohio, between Dayton and Cincinnati, and was one of the members of the Golden Circle and Order of the Quest, also known as the Jason Society, which gave issue to most of the political elite of the United States of America, who are, by the way, all, and I mean all without exception, related to each other. Now, Samuel Prescott Bush married, and his son Prescott Bush became a U.S. Senator from Connecticut, the director of Prudential Insurance, the director of CBS, a partner in Brown Brother Harriman, chairman National Republican Finance Committee, funds placed in Merrill Lynch accounts in Switzerland under the guidance of Donald Reagan. When he married, that marriage gave issue to the following: Prescott Bush II, an investment banker indicted for fraudulent banking practices; George Bush, chairman of Zapata Oil from 1963 to 64, chairman of the Republican Party, Harris County, Texas, when John F. Kennedy was killed, delegate to the GOP National Convention, 1964, 1968 member of the 90th and 91st Congress from Texas. From 1965 to 66, Nixon appointed Bush as ambassador to the United Nations to deal with China. He was the director of the Central Intelligence Agency, chairman of the National GOP Party, vice president of the United States of America, and president of the United States of America. 4 other children were William H. Bush, James Bush, Jonathan Bush, and Nancy, who married Alex Ellis. The issue of George and Barbara Bush was Dorothy, who married William LeBond, John Ellis Bush, Neil Bush, son of the director of CIA, becomes director of Silverado Savings and Loan and launders CIA drug money. Silverado loses over $100 million and Neil goes unpunished. And the 2 other children, Marvin Pierce Bush and George Bush II. Folks, this intelligence was gathered by one of our agents, codenamed John Galt, who spent literally years in dusty libraries and books of genealogy. And I'm not going to tell you which libraries or how he arrived at this information, but it has been checked. It is absolutely accurate, and this is just one portion of the pedigree of George Bush, who's literally related to most of the royal families of Europe. Now, you can have a copy of this chart if you want it. I'll tell you how to get it later, so have your pencils and paper ready. And I'm going to tell you exactly where the money goes. 1/2 of the money goes to help pay for the airtime here. The other half goes to our agent, John Galt, to pay for the years of toil in dusty library books that nobody ever looks in, tracing genealogy. And folks, this is only one of the charts that he has furnished to us, along with other agents of the Citizens Agency for Joint Intelligence who are engaged in the exact same research. And we have found that our most productive connections of the secret societies, the royal families, and what's happening in the world today is through genealogy. We have found a direct connection between the Peasants' Rebellion in England, the French Revolution, the Ronald Reagan and George Bush political campaign, and the George Bush political campaign. As far as the Peasants' Rebellion goes, the Encyclopedia Britannica calls it a, quote, curiously spontaneous rebellion. Barbara Tushman, in her 14th century history, A Distant Mirror, said that the rebellion spread, quote, with some evidence of planning. Winston Churchill went even further. In his work, The Birth of Britain, he wrote, quote, throughout the summer of 1381 there was a general ferment. Beneath it all lay organization. Agents moved around the villages of central England in touch with a, quote, great society, unquote, which was said to meet in London. The spark of rebellion was being fanned vigorously, and finally the signal was given. Even though he had been arrested, excommunicated, and even now was a prisoner in the ecclesiastic prison at Maidstone in Kent, letters went out from priest John Ball and from other priests who followed him. Clerics were then the only literate class, so letters must have been received by local priests and were obviously intended to be shared with or read aloud to others. They all contained a signal to act now, which could put to rest the concept that the rebellion was simply a spontaneous convulsion of frustration that just happened to affect 100,000 Englishmen all at the same time. This from a letter from John Ball. In it he says, quote, John Ball gritteth you well all and doth you to understand he hath rungen your bell. Now right and might, while and skyle, God speed every dale, which means ideal. Now is time, unquote. From priest Jake Carter, quote, you have great need to take God with you in all your deeds, for now is time to be war, unquote. From priest Jake Truman, quote, Jake Truman doth you to understand that falseness and guile have reigned too long, and truth hath been set under a lock, and falseness reigneth in every flock. God do bote, for now is time, unquote. Now you'll notice that in every one of those quotes there was one phrase that stands out, and that phrase is now is time. One letter from John Ball, quote, St. Mary Priest, unquote, is worth quoting in its entirety. Even with the medieval English spelling, the meaning will be clear. Lechery and gluttony were frequent points in his accusations of high church leaders. Quote, John Ball sent Mary Priest great well all manner men, bides him in the name of the Trinity. Father and Son and Holy Ghost stand mainly together in truth, and help is truth, and truth shall help you. Now reigneth pride in prize, and covets is hold, wise and lechery, withouten shame, and gluttony withouten blame. Envy reigneth with treason, and sloth is take in great season. God do bote, for now is time. Amen. Unquote. Now, folks, if you research the history of the French Revolution, you will hear that the spark, the word that spread through the country like wildfire, that ignited the rebellion in France, was, quote, now is the time. Literally the same phrase. Some say that in the American Revolution the same phrase was heard, and we find mention of it in several texts, but not like it was heard in the Peasants' Revolt in England, and not like it was heard in the French Revolution. But it was heard again in modern times. It was the campaign slogan of the Bush-Reagan campaign, and was used again in the Bush campaign. Now is the time. Now is the time. One famous photograph, staged by George Bush and selected by George Bush for publication in Life magazine, shows him lying in bed holding the pyramid with the capstone in place, signaling to Masons, Freemasons, and members, the priests of the mystery schools around the world, that he is the one who will bring into fruition their ages, centuries, millennia-old dream of the New World Order. In our search for the Templars, we have followed them right to their gravestones. And on some of their gravestones, it shows the knight leaning back, reclining, with his feet resting up on a dog, denoting that he is the master. On most of the tombstones, however, we have found something unexpected: the skull and crossbones. Now, when the Knights Templars were persecuted, the fleet, they had vast fleets, an entire navy, disappeared. And no one, at least no one in the establishment historian group, claims to know where they went. But we have found them, folks. They became the pirates and hoisted their symbol of the skull and bones to the yardarm. They became the vast fleet of pirates who roamed the seas of the world and terrorized nations, navies, and merchantmen. And thus arose, from the initiation rites of the Templars, the initiatory rites of crossing the equator, the international date line, and others, and accounts for the brotherhood amongst the pirates of the world, even to establishing seaports that they owned and operated and where they could always find safety. Those on the land established what they called the Brotherhood of Death. Chapters were formed throughout the world. George Bush was initiated in the crypt, or what is known as the tomb, at Yale, into the Brotherhood of Death, also known as the Russell Trust, also known as the Skull and Bones. The research of many people have revealed what the interior of the crypt, or what is known as the tomb, at Yale, the fraternity house of the bonesmen, contains. And Anthony C. Sutton, in his monumental work, America's Secret Establishment, all about the skull and bones, and one other who wrote a magazine article and published it, revealed the initiation ceremony, revealed that swastikas were found inside the tomb, revealed that the altar is a pile of bones, and that the secret ceremony that George Bush underwent during his initiation was thus. On the day of his initiation, George Bush was conducted through a long, dark passage into an immense hall draped with black. He was able to see by the faint light of sepulchral lamps corpses in their shrouds. The altar, built of human skeletons, stood in the center. Ghostly forms moved through the hall, leaving behind them a foul odor. At length 2 men dressed as specters appeared and tied a pink band of ribbon smeared with blood around his forehead. Upon this was an image of the Lady of Loretto. A crucifix was placed in his hand, and an amulet hung around his neck. His clothes were removed and laid upon a funeral pyre in a fireplace, while upon his body crosses were smeared in blood. Then his pedunta were tied with string, that's his genitals. Now 5 horrid and frightening figures, blood-stained and mumbling, approached him and threw themselves down in prayer. After an hour, sounds of weeping were heard. The funeral pyre started to burn, and his clothes were consumed. From the flames of this fire a huge and almost transparent form arose, while the 5 prostrate figures went into terrible convulsions. Now came the voice of an invisible hierophant, booming from somewhere below as George Bush lay in a coffin naked. The words were those of these oaths which the candidate had to repeat. Quote, "In the name of the crucified one, I swear to sever all bonds which unite me with mother, brothers, sisters, wife, relatives, friends, mistress, kings, superiors, benefactors, or any other man to whom I have promised faith, service, or obedience. I name the place in which I was born. Henceforth I live in another dimension, which I will not reach until I have renounced the evil globe which has been cursed by heaven. From now onwards I shall reveal to my new chief all that I have heard or found out, and I shall also seek out and observe things which might otherwise have escaped me. I honor the aqua tofana. It is a quick and essential medium of removing from the earth through death or robbing them of their wits of those who oppose truth and those who try to take it from our hands. I shall avoid Spain, Naples, and all other accursed lands, and I shall avoid the temptation to betray what I now have heard. Lightning will not strike as rapidly as the dagger, which will reach me wherever I may be, should I betray my initiation." Unquote. Now a candelabrum bearing 7 black candles is placed before the candidate, and also a bowl containing what is supposed to be human blood. He washes himself in the blood and drinks a quantity of it. The string around his genitalia is removed. He is placed in a bath to undergo complete ablution. After this, he eats a meal composed of vegetables. At this time, he is given his new name, by which he will be known to all of the others in the order, the Brotherhood of Death. And with the completion of his initiation, George Bush joined all of the male members of his family in a long line of ancestry, traced from Robert Roos to the modern day. He took his place in the order, the Knights Templar, Freemasonry, and has worked diligently to fulfill his role in the completion of the plan, the great work, the formation of the New World Order, the one world totalitarian socialist state, the destruction of all existing nation-states, all existing religions, and enslavement of the mob. The very highest degrees of the order show that the rationalism and materialism of the thinkers who developed it were determined to stamp out belief in religion. God and any faith in a deity, the initiate was told, were human inventions and had no real meaning. Subsequently, this was developed further, and the member who arrived at the highest position, that of Rex or king, learned that he was now equal to a king, and that all men were capable of equal advancement. Hence the need for kings over ordinary mortals was an illusion, and at the highest rank the title of Rex Mundi, or King of the World, is assumed. If you would like to get this genealogy, folks, if you're a CAGI member, it's $5. Send it in to the address that you'll hear at the end of this broadcast. For everybody else, it's $10. Good night, and God bless each and every single one of you.
Okay, so the information is posted on the YouTube description box and also in the chat in the D Live. So if you want to come in, you can go ahead and do that. So I'm finishing up eating some sunflower seeds. I mean, everyone's probably heard of Skull and Bones by now. What they might not realize is that they were originated as the Templars. So if you watch the last episode, maybe even the actual last 2 episodes of the Hour of the Time with Bill Cooper, you'll know that there's a couple of the origins and the end of the Templars, and this just kind of explains a little bit of the Skull and Bones. Now, if you don't know about Skull and Bones, well, let's just explain to you. But let's look at the members of the Skull and Bones, shall we? I'm not sure if I should just use Skull and Bones, but let's just look through a couple of them. We'll look at the Wikipedia, we'll look at BusinessInsider.com, we'll look at Ranker.com. Heck, might as well look at Britannica. Well, it looks to be like a long list. Let's just look at the most recent. Well, they haven't really kept up to date, have they? Okay. I guess there are a lot of omissions in the Wikipedia. Well, here's 13 most powerful members of Skull and Bones that we know about. Abby Jackson and Christina Sturbins. On Business Insider on December 6, 2015. William Howard Taft. Walter Camp. Father of American football. Lyman Spitzer, noted astrophysicist, dreamed up the idea behind the Hubble Space Telescope. Potter Stewart, George Bundy, I don't know what the hell. George H.W. Bush, William F. Buckley Jr., John F. Kerry, Frederick Wallace Smith. Yeah, he founded FedEx. George W. Bush, Stephanie Schwartzman. Let's see. He has the hedge fund, the Blackstone Group, which went public in 2007. Oh, wow. Look at that. Average of $1 million per day for the fiscal year ending December 2006. Holy crap. Dana Milbank, journalist, covered both the Bush and Obama presidencies, offending both at one time or another. That's a column for the Washington Post. All right. Austin Goolsbee, economist. These economists suck because everything just keeps getting worse. Except for the rich, ultra rich. They seem to get better now, huh? Alright, let's see. Some who didn't know, but Paul Giamatti was one of them. Damn it, because he's a good actor. A lot of these people I really don't know too much about. Just kind of looking through to like kind of see something that kind of register. But a lot of these, I mean, you don't really know. They're just kind of probably involved in politics or some super corporation or hedge fund or something. I bet. Yeah, any of these people in the Skull and Bones weren't blue collar workers the rest of their lives. They didn't work at some company as janitors. You can see the Skull and Bones building, definitely some it's called the tomb. You see some definitely architectural similarities to Freemasonry. With the emblem of the society is a skull and crossbones with the number 322 beneath it. And they're saying it's generally taken to refer to year 322 BCE, which is funny. Yeah, look at that. In 2009, I didn't know Geronimo's descendants sued and unsuccessfully in order to get the skull in question turned over to them. Yeah, like they're gonna get their skulls skulls back. They really don't tell you too much. I guess secret society, they can have things pretty secret, I guess. Oh, and they're like Skull and Bones, the Atlantic is just not just for white dudes anymore. And there's gonna be, I think they say women are now allowed into it or something. Skull and Bones, Freemasonry, Rosicrucians, Knight Templar. Anyway, there's just a lot. It's just a lot. I kind of want to segue a little bit because it kind of gets in there. There's a good little bit by Illuminati Watcher, and I think I might share that. There's a lot of things that I kind of watched today as I was planting my strawberries for next year and drilling holes in old tires. Yeah, I know that's a big aside. Let's see. Oh yeah, is that the one? No. Impact vlogs. Oh, that's a good one. I like this one. High impact vlogs. You know, I don't always agree with them, but they do give you some pretty good insight sometimes. I'll probably get a copyright strike from them. Who cares?
The very word secrecy is repugnant in a free and open society, and we are, as a people, inherently and historically opposed to secret societies, to secret oaths, and to secret proceedings.
This is just a short video bringing awareness to certain symbols that seem to saturate our day-to-day lives. There are many people in this world who put a lot of stock into rituals and symbolism, and a big chunk of this is linked with Freemasonry. Now, no one knows with certainty how or when the Masonic fraternity was formed. A widely accepted theory among Masonic scholars is that it arose from the Stonemasons Guild during the Middle Ages. The language and symbols used in the fraternity's rituals come from this era. The oldest known document that makes reference to Masons is the Regis poem, printed about 1390, which was a copy of an earlier work. In 1717, 4 lodges in London formed the first Grand Lodge of England, and records from that point on are more complete. Within 30 years, the fraternity had spread throughout Europe and the American colonies, and Freemasonry became very popular in colonial America. George Washington was a Mason. Ben Franklin served as the head of the fraternity in Pennsylvania, as did Paul Revere and Joseph Warren in Massachusetts. Other well-known Masons involved in the founding of America included John Hancock, John Sullivan, Lafayette, Baron Frederick von Steuben, Nathaniel Greene, and John Paul Jones. Another Mason, Chief Justice John Marshall, shaped the Supreme Court into its present form. It's no secret that many people in politics are linked up with secret societies. That alone should give people pause. Why would anybody be involved in an organization that holds a monopoly on force and violence, namely government? Government organizations have attracted and continue to attract some of the most vile, narcissistic psychopaths on the planet. And a lot of these people belong to secret orders. And while Freemasons perform many benevolent functions in the public eye, many of its members appear to be working behind the scenes with their sights set on world domination. As a benevolent front organization, the Masons have a tradition of founding orphanages, homes for widows, and homes for the aged. Today in North America, the Masonic fraternity of over 4 million members continues this tradition by reportedly giving almost $1.5 million each day to causes that range from operating children's hospitals, providing treatment for childhood language disorders, treating eye diseases, funding medical research, contributing to local community service, and providing care to Masons and their families at Masonic homes. And yet these same fraternal members can be found all over the place, occupying positions of power where they use their influence to operate the very government that harms people, strips them of their rights, and takes their stuff. But back to the symbols of Freemasonry. Pretty much everywhere you look, you can find traces of this symbolism. The back of the dollar bill, popular music, even the layout of the streets and architecture of Washington's District of Criminals. But what a lot of people still don't know is that the symbolism of this secret society is interlaced and woven into other familiar images we see every day and have grown accustomed to. For example, this is the Royal Arch Masonic apron. Royal Arch Masonry, also known as Capitular Masonry, is the first part of the York Rite system of the Masonic degrees. Royal Arch Masons meet as a chapter, and the Royal Arch chapter confers 4 degrees: Mark Master Mason, Past Master, Most Excellent Master, and Royal Arch Mason. The standard, widely accepted Masonic Rite has 3 degrees. They are Entered Apprentice, Fellow Craft, and the highest rank that anyone can earn, Master Mason. Now, the confusion starts when you consider that the Scottish Rite has 33 degrees. For those who are unaware, the 33rd degree is part of the Scottish Rite of Masonry, which is an organization that exists within Freemasonry that Master Masons can join if they want to. The degrees of the Scottish Rite are not higher than the 3rd degree, despite the numerical appearance. But what does the Royal Arch Masonic apron look like to you? Let's compare it with Google's Gmail icon. It kind of makes you wonder what the purpose is to bring a Masonic symbol into the Google logo. Next is the Masonic Tubal Cain. According to Masonic historian Albert Gallatin Mackey, Tubal Cain has been considered among Masons as a symbol of worldly possessions. He said that Tubal Cain is the Vulcan of the pagans and is thought to have been closely connected with ancient Freemasonry. Now, Tubal Cain is also a person mentioned in the Bible in Genesis 4:22, as well as the Hebrew book of Asher. He was a descendant of Cain who is recorded to have killed his brother Abel, and he's the son of Lamech and Zillah. He was the brother of Naamah and half-brother of Jabal, Jubal, and Noah, and you can find that in Genesis 5:30. But the Masonic Tubal Cain symbol has some interesting similarities to another icon recognized all over the world. Now, this could be a coincidence, or somebody intentionally crafted the image to appear similar to the Masonic symbol. And since Facebook is basically the data mining front organization for the NSA and other government spy organizations, it wouldn't surprise me if the Facebook logo was deliberately chosen to mimic the Masonic symbol. Next up is the Divine King sign. Within it can be found 3 sixes, or 666, attributed to the mark of the beast from Revelation 13. And it looks to me like the only difference between the Divine King sign and the Google Chrome icon is the color. The Eye of Providence, or the All-Seeing Eye, bears some resemblance to the Google GPS logo. And the last one I'll deal with here is the pyramid capstone, and within it the All-Seeing Eye, which looks like the Google Play icon. My question is, why? Why all the symbolism? What's the purpose of crafting current logos from past symbolism from a secret society whose members include rich and powerful globalists who seek to take away individual rights? What do you guys think? Is this just a coincidence? Are these all just harmless symbols and shapes? Or is there a deeper, more sinister meaning behind them? Leave your thoughts for the world and the Google Thought Police in the comments section below. Guys, don't forget to visit and subscribe to my
Okay, so there hasn't been anyone joining yet. One other thing, I mean, while I'm going down this, I wouldn't say rabbit hole anymore. I mean, we're way past the rabbit hole. The rabbit hole just became a big crater. We're just seeing this stuff on the surface now. When you really want to get down a rabbit hole, I don't know. You're getting into I don't know. What's so crazy now? I mean, flat Earth maybe. Maybe that's the rabbit hole. Maybe the everything's a matrix. Maybe that's the rabbit hole. This stuff is just on the surface. You can't really disagree that the symbolism isn't in plain sight anymore. It's there. Maybe I'll show a little bit of the hour-long Illuminati Watcher one. It really sucks in some ways.
Future. That's where you go. That's
the reason why I think it kind of sucks is, well, kind of ruins the Back to the Future for me a little bit because I love that movie. And I'm pretty sure everyone else does too. Oh yeah, Hollow Earth maybe. Christian. Hi Christian. Hey Ryan. Hey Snark. I think Man to Talk with James will be on tonight, so I probably won't do an open topic, but who knows. Okay, I'm gonna play it.
right. 25 years into the future. I've always dreamed of seeing the future, looking beyond my years, seeing the progress of mankind.
Hi everybody, this is Isaac. You're listening to the Conspiracy Theories and Unpopular Culture podcast. We've got a lot going on lately. I know most of you are thinking, are we going to talk about Kate Spade and Anthony Bourdain and their suicides today? Are we going to talk about Mars and the aliens that NASA says they're going to find on there? We're going to talk about Kanye West's new album and all of the Luciferian symbolism that he's been showing us on the interviews. Are we going to talk about Smokey the fake news bear? I don't think so. None of it. Not today. And I'll tell you why. Because I've got something more important to talk about. Something more exciting to talk about. I'm going to do an analysis of Back to the Future. Alright, so I'm actually going to talk about all of those subjects that I just kind of teased on the next episode of the podcast. Because I've got a lot on here. I've got a whole gang of stuff. I got stuff about Beyonce, Katy Perry, and their attempts to purchase religious centers. Han Solo, Jack Parsons. I mean, I got a bunch of stuff, but all of that took a backseat very quickly when I watched Back to the Future. It was an innocent attempt at just relaxing the other day. I mean, who doesn't love Back to the Future? It was on, so I thought I'll give it a whirl. Just to kind of kick back for a minute. But, hey, you know, pulls you back in. Once you see the truth lying beneath the surface, you just want to share it with your friends, screaming from the mountaintop. So that's what I'm going to do today. We're going to talk about Back to the Future, the first film. I plan on watching the second and third one to see if there's any connections to be had there. But for now, I want to talk about the first one because I found some symbolism that shocked me. I'm going to go through some of the Illuminati symbolism behind this, some of the ideas of why they do the public display of the ritual, Hollywood sex magic, sexual perversions.
Apparently your mother is amorously infatuated with you instead of your father.
Whoa, wait a minute. Doc, are you trying to tell me that my mother has got the hots for me?
Precisely.
Aliens, Gnosticism, alchemy, and of course, the Luciferian illumination from Mr. Marty McFly himself.
I guess you guys aren't ready for that yet. But your kids are going to love it.
So we're going to go through all of that. I'm going to try to break it down for those of you that are brand new to this subject. But we're going to go at times deep enough for those of you that are familiar with these topics already. Now, the reason I'm excited to talk to you about this, because I previously talked about a Back to the Future expose video I found on YouTube from a person who alludes to the idea that there is some prediction for 9/11 in the Back to the Future films. And it was very intriguing. I mean, some of it kind of goes off, and I can't support all of the theories they have, but it was very interesting, very fun. And then I saw some things. I saw some alchemical symbolism in this film that were so obvious to me that I thought, why didn't I ever think of this before? So I want to be the first to unveil it. Now, I am going to throw a caveat out there. There is a theorist named Robert Sullivan who is, from what I gather, a 32nd degree Freemason, and he has been studying symbolism in the films as well. I'm curious if he's gone into this territory already. I haven't read his book yet. I just started following him on Twitter, and I want to have him on as a guest to break this down a little bit further according to his theories. So, like, it's possible that he talked about this already. So, I don't want to claim, to be the first, because maybe he did already. I don't know. But I certainly couldn't find anything with a Google search. So, this could be mind-bending first-time territory. Okay? So, let's get into it. God, that was like a 5-minute teaser. Sorry, guys. We're going to get into this thing right now, though. We're going to talk about Back to the Future and the Illuminati display of the public ritual. I talked about this in the past. They show us allegorical tales through entertainment. They are conditioning the minds of the masses to understand their occult doctrine. Now, in this film, there is, if you recall at the beginning, there was a woman who comes up to Marty and his girlfriend, and she kind of breaks up their little makeout session on the bench, and she's asking for donations for the clock tower. And behind her, you see the all-seeing eye inside of a pyramid in the little downtown Shoppe area. Obvious Illuminati symbolism. We know that now, but back in 1985, 86, whatever this was filmed at or released, not so common back then, right? Now, if you read Manly P. Hall's Secret Teachings of the Ages, he talks about Neoplatonism and says that Neoplatonism was concerned almost exclusively with the problems of higher metaphysics. It recognized the existence of a secret and all-important doctrine which, from the time of the earliest civilizations, had been concealed within the rituals, symbols, and allegories of religions and philosophies. Now, it's very important because when you study the quote-unquote Illuminati and their symbolism, you find that Neoplatonism is one of the central tenets. In fact, there are three major ideas behind occultism. You got Neoplatonism, Hermeticism, and the Kabbalah. Now, Neoplatonism, that is derived from an ancient Greek offshoot of the beliefs of Plato, hence the name, right? Now, Plato, he followed the teachers such as Pythagoras and Socrates, who themselves were synchronizing ideas of occult nature. They would travel around the Middle East, and they would learn from the mystery schools of Egypt, from the Babylonian stargazers, And then they would take their knowledge and go back to their homeland and recruit initiates and teach them these esoteric doctrines in private, only to those that were worthy. I believe it was Pythagoras had a 5-year vow of silence before you could learn any of his teachings, which I don't know how long people lived back then. I assume it was like 30 years. So that's pretty devoted to do that sort of thing. Now, so again, Neoplatonism again, it's just synchronizing different mystery school teachings into this new packaged form. It's kind of like New Agers. They're just a repackaged form of occultism. Now, Neoplatonism, when you study this, it resides behind almost all of the occult doctrines as this understanding that all of the organized religious doctrines are merely a shell of the truth, and the real truth can be found within, subjectively, through occult practices such as meditation or other mystic practices. Now, they weren't the if you follow the history of the occult, you could also take it all the way up to the Nazis, something I'm particularly interested in. Not because I sympathize with them, but because it's fascinating that so many people were lured into their belief system back then. And if you read Stephen Flower's book, Lords of the Left-Hand Path, he talks about this. He says, not Nazis per se, but talks about sort of like their system, okay? And he says, as a form of lesser magic, these rituals had many functions. Among them were the forging of a focused mass will of the Volk, the people, the creation of a deep sense of self-consciousness as an organic entity, the bonding of that entity to a set of symbols, foot stomp, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, okay? I'm going to repeat that. The bonding of that entity, the group, the mass will we're talking about, to a set of symbols, and the projection of the entity through those symbols back in time to the ancestors and forward in time to the descendants. Now, I found that very curious because Back to the Future is talking about going back and forth in time, right? I don't know if Stephen Flowers was watching Back to the Future when he wrote that, but I found that all very curious. The focus of the mass will and projecting sets of symbols and connecting to this sort of subconscious realm. That's what this is all about. Now, how curious is it that to travel through time, the DeLorean has to travel at 88 miles per hour. 88 is the number for Hail Hitler. H in numerology, H is the number 8. It's the 8th letter in the alphabet. So 88. So again, I don't know if there was a purpose for it being 88 miles an hour, but I find it very curious. Okay. So anyways, that's the primer. Overall, Back to the Future, Illuminati confirm. Join Illuminati, $1 million. Okay. Jokes. I'm just joking, people. Come on now. Okay, so Hollywood magic, sex magic we're talking about here. I found this very curious that you would find this theme in the film. It was such an innocent film, right? We're going to talk in this mini section, Hollywood magic. We're going to talk about the idea of the powers of sex and connecting us to the divine. And we're going to talk about aliens and the manipulation of science fiction. Now, I'm breaking up these themes because I think this is the clearest way to demonstrate what it is I'm talking about here. I think that if you look at Back to the Future with each one of these sort of major themes in mind, you'll see them. And in reality, once you understand all of this stuff, they all go hand in hand, all of these topics. But I thought it'd be easiest to sort of demonstrate my point by breaking it up into sections, okay? First, we got Marty McFly. What a curious name here. McGregor Mathers was a magician who was, in the groups that Aleister Crowley was riding in back in the day. he was, Samuel McGregor Mathers was one of the founders of the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn. That is the magical order that you see from the likes of Sierra. She wore the jacket about the Hermetic Order. You see this oftentimes. He was this Freemason, into the same ideas of the occult and ritual magic. And, apparently there was a sort of battle between him and Crowley at one time in the early 1900s. But anyways, I found it curious because his name, while it's not the same, obviously, McGregor Mathers, Marty McFly, there were some similarities there. And that's actually one of the things that triggered me into taking a closer look at this film. And when you look at the ideas and themes of the Illuminati with sex magic and sexual improprieties, we have to wonder why they do this sort of thing. Why are they doing these things like Crowley had the Cakes of Light? And we see the Cakes of Light come up with Marina Abramovich and the whole Pizzagate thing and these spirit cooking events that you see the alt-right talking about all the time, right? And they talk about, it's kind of like embracing cannibalism. It's talking about eating ejaculate, as it were. That's what Crowley's Cakes of Light were. There was basically it was in this Gnostic church or Gnostic mass that he would do. And that was their form of communion, was to basically eat those sorts of things, okay? Now, why would people be into this? It's because they're antinomians. And what that means is they're just basically looking for shock value to do anything against the cultural norms as a way of expanding their mind. And, and this goes into a gray zone for me personally, because I get being anti-conformist and not listening to the, official voice of, social programming. I get all that. To take it this far, though, that is something reserved for only those that want to take it to this next level, okay? If you go up again, we'll look at Stephen Flower's book, Lords of the Left-Hand Path, which is all about antinomianism. And he says, there is often a strong antinomian element in the magical methodology of the left-hand path. Going against the grain of social conventions or natural boundaries is often seen as a mode of consciously exercising the divine faculty inherent in humanity. Now, what he's talking about, and he says left-hand path because, they look at the world as broken up into left-hand or right-hand paths. Left-hand path is the antinomian path. The right-hand path is the more conservative social norm path, typically assigned to organized religion, Christianity, whatever, the Abrahamic religions. And he says, and the idea here is to embrace things outside of the norm as a way of getting the mind to connect to the true God, according to their belief system. Now, and it's all about these connections into other dimensions in order to reach these altered state of consciousness. And that's why sex is so prevalent in this film. Sex, drugs, and rock and roll, they all go together. It's all part of the big Dionysian ritual. These are things that have been practiced for hundreds of years. And these occultists, they use these practices to enter into an altered state because they think that they're connecting with God, with this source of divinity. Now, some of these schools of thought, they go into the ideas of 2001 Space Odyssey, where we saw the Star Child being birthed after alchemically fusing with Saturn and the Black Cube. You can see my Kubrick's Code project for more on that. Aleister Crowley talked about this with the Moonchild, where, Jack Parsons and L. Ron Hubbard were channeling this Scarlet Whore of Babylon in order to procreate, to make the magical birth child. It's all about creating something new by reaching out into the divine, into the altered states. The Gnostics, they think our souls are imprisoned into these human suitcases on this earth. And that's why later we're going to talk about the Gnostic principles of Back to the Future. Now, the occultists believe we can evolve out of this imprisonment. And they think that we can evolve into a different form of consciousness, and that somehow these aliens from these altered dimensions are going to help us do that. I don't want to go too far into the deep end yet, but that is where all of this goes, okay? So why is it that in Back to the Future, you see downtown in this one block area that there is an adult porno store sort of right next to the All-Seeing Eye place, which is the All-Seeing Eye inside the pyramid. That store is like this metaphysical store, because you actually see a different shot of it in the film where they talk about, palm readings and those kinds of things. But there's also very clearly marked an adult store. And then if you look at the theater, it's called the Essex Theater, spelled E-S-S-E-X. You could break that up into two words, right? S-sex. At the theater, very, very clearly on the marquee, you see the words Orgy American Style. Now, why would that be on this film? I mean, very clearly, there's a triple X theater downtown right next to the Milkshake Shack there at the diner. It's because this was actually filmed on a Hollywood set, by the way. It's not a real downtown area. It's just a set in Hollywood. Because they know, and they were showing it to us back then, but people weren't really paying attention, that sex is a very powerful tool in the occult toolbox for making contact. And in fact, the more sort of deviant the sexual nature is, the more powerful the energy could be. That's why Marty sleeps with his mom practically. When Marty's Calvin Klein in the film, it's a defiance of social norms. It's not proper. In fact, there's at the scene where she hits it, when he goes back in time to 1955, and her dad hits Marty McFly with the car. He's in her bedroom, in her bed, and he comes to, and whatever, she calls him Calvin Klein, whatever, and then she says, there's an allegory for actually him exposing his genitalia to her. I know what you're thinking. Isaac, you've lost it, man. What are you talking about? But she says, that's a big bruise you've got there. Reaches for his head, and he falls off the bed in utter shock. Then her mom comes up, and then she's panicking. Put your pants back on.
Klein? Do you mind if I sit here?
No, fine. No, good. Fine. Good.
That's a big bruise you have there.
Mom!
Lorraine, are you up there?
Oh my God, it's my mother. Quick. Put your pants back on.
What do you think that is? Why would, if someone reaches for your head because there's a bruise on it, you wouldn't be that shocked by it that you'd fall backwards off the bed. And then why, like, her mom surely knew that Marty was up there in her bedroom. It doesn't make sense. It makes sense when you put it in the context of he had his penis out. I know, it's terrible, right? But these weird sort of sexual things and themes are, quite possibly what they're into as ways of making contact with the divine. Now, you could look at various examples in the film that mom here is like straight, she's lusting for her son, which is, it's such a creepy idea that, watching the film now, I think, why was this a thing? Why did they so much emphasis on this, on the incest here, right? And Marty kind of wants it. He acts like he doesn't, but he does. Like, why do you think it is that Marty can't stop impressing his mom? Like, even when he realized that his mom desires him more than George, George is Marty's dad, and Marty goes back in time and is trying to hook George up with his mom so that he can in the future be born. Like, he knows that this is a thing, and he goes to the diner and tells George, like, here, read this script to her, and you'll really impress her. But then Biff comes in the diner, and then Marty can't just sit the fuck down. Like, he has to get up and defend Mom. Instead of letting George do it, he gets in the middle, and now Mom wants him even more. So he's going, and then he is talking to George. They're doing laundry, hanging laundry up in the backyard, and he tells George, like, "Hey man, like, you got to get it together, man. You got to really start hitting on Lorraine, his mom." And and Marty's plan to make this happen is he's going to take Lorraine to the dance, his mom, and he's going to start making out with her in the car, and then George can come and save the day.
Daddy-o, you're coming to a rescue, right? Okay, let's go over the plan again. 8:55, where are you gonna be?
I'm gonna be at the dance.
Right, and where am I gonna be?
You're gonna be in the car with her.
Right, okay, so right around 9 o'clock, she's gonna get very angry with me.
Why is she gonna get angry with you?
Well, because, George, nice girls get angry when guys take advantage of them.
Oh, you mean you're gonna go touch her on her...
No, George, look.
But it's like, I don't know. What a weird plan, right? I mean, think about this. Would you do that? It's just odd. And then, and then Marty does a subtle shaming of women there when he's talking to her, and because George is like, well, now if you're in the car making out with Lorraine, why is she gonna be mad? Like, why will I be coming to save the day? And he says, well, because good girls get mad when guys do things like this. And, it's a little shamey, right? A little shamey, assuming that just because a girl wants to make out with you means she's some kind of slut or something. He's slut shaming her. He slut shamed his own mom. What an ass. Maybe Marty's got a little bit of that Madonna whore complex. Madonna Scarlet whore complex, maybe. So then he goes to the dance, fast forward, he goes to the dance, takes his mom, Lorraine, with him, and they start kissing in the car.
Why are you so nervous?
Lorraine, have you ever been in a situation where you knew you had to act a certain way, but when you got there, you didn't know if you could go through with it?
Oh, you mean like how you're supposed to act on a first date?
Oh, sort of.
Oh, I think I know exactly what you mean.
You do?
You know what I do in those situations?
What?
I don't worry. This is all wrong. I don't know what it is. But when I kiss you, it's like I'm kissing my brother. I guess that doesn't make any sense, does it?
Believe me, it makes perfect sense.
And she stops and says, it feels like I'm kissing my brother, which again is an odd thing to say. First off, how would she know what it's like to kiss her brother? I don't know. The whole thing's weird. If you look at it from a new perspective, you can see how weird this is. There's a very strong theme of sexual deviancy in this film. From the incest to the porno theaters right downtown. You can't deny that it's there, okay? Now, when we talk about the sex, we talk about sex magic. Again, we're still in the first sort of theme here. The theme of, Hollywood sex magic. And these themes of sex magic and getting the mind into an altered state and aliens, they all fit together with these other themes that we're going to talk about, with Gnosticism, fallen angels, Lucifer, and alchemy. again, if we look at the idea of the 88 miles per hour and we tie that to Hail Hitler, the HH, you could look at the Hitler experiments to contact aliens through the Vril Society. I did a whole video on that with Star Wars. But he did the, like the Die Glocke experiment. That was like where they had this big bell UFO that allegedly went through time and landed in Kecksburg, PA, 30 years later or whatever it was. But Marty, he, at the beginning, Marty goes to the Twin Pines Mall and Doc Brown's in there showing him how his dog Einstein's going to go through time in the car, the DeLorean. They do that. Then the Libyan terrorists come and they shoot Doc Brown. So then Marty hops in the DeLorean, goes back through time to 1955. But when the DeLorean breaks, when it pierces the veil, as it were, it crashes into the barn. And the kids, the family comes running out. And I forget his name. Anyways, it's the guy who eventually starts the Twin Pines Mall. Okay. And they run out to the barn because they hear the crash and they see the car and it's got the, like the Lambo doors or whatever. And the dad's got the gun and he's like, what the hell is this thing? And then the kid's like, he's got a science fiction magazine. And he basically implies that Marty is an alien. He's the fallen angel. Lucifer, which we'll get into later, of course. But the kids, they even talk about how he's trying to take on a human form. He's a shapeshifter.
Oh, looks like an airplane without wings.
That ain't no airplane. Look.
Sorry about your barn.
It's already mutated into human form. Shoot it!
Take that, you mutated son of a bitch!
Now, George McFly, we find out he reads and writes science fiction alien works. Okay? Now, this was curious to me because in The Dark Path, in my recent book, I talked about the alien agenda and how it fits into the occult. And we see that occultists like Jack Parsons, Werner von Braun, all these people that started NASA, all these star nerds, they're all into this idea that aliens exist and we should try to make contact. And they all got this from the guy named Konstantin Tsiolkovsky. He was the first. He was in all this panpsychism and global consciousness nonsense. And anyways, so George McFly, we turns out he's reading and writing this stuff too. He's a little bit L. Ron Hubbard. And Marty demonstrates how one can be manipulated through these belief systems by he dons the suit, the nuclear protection suit or whatever, and he puts a Walkman on George's head when George is in bed sleeping, and he turns on some heavy metal and George doesn't know what the hell's going on, and he basically manipulates George into asking Lorraine out. It's a manipulation through the alien psyop, okay? It's very clear. That's exactly what's going on today. It's an alien psyop to get us interested in them because they think that these occultists, they believe that the aliens are the truth to salvation. That's their religion. I mean, that's a very oversimplified statement, but that's how I see it. But if you look at the final, before the denouement there was the DeLorean needs to get up to 88 miles per hour. We're talking about being back in 1955, and you'll see very clearly that the starting line where it starts from is the Bluebird Motel. Again, that ties into Project Bluebird, Again, it's a study of UFOs and aliens. When, after the DeLorean makes it back to 1985, time has now been altered. The space-time continuum has been altered, and George McFly is a confident, successful novel writer, and he wrote a science fiction book. This is one of the last scenes here, and the family opens up the book, and it's called A Match Made in Space, and it's apparently a retelling of his experience of an alien visitation, which of course is Marty in the suit, matching up him with his wife Lorraine. Now again, I see very common themes here with Aleister Crowley's Moonchild and these alien pursuits, these ideas of sexual contact, which again, it's a very high level view of this, but like if you look at H.R. Giger and all of his artwork, he was connecting in with dark forces, and all of his aliens had these sexual connotations. And there's something to this. There's some kind of subconscious, tangible thing there, okay? And just to drive the point home, before I finish this section on Hollywood sex magic and alien sci-fi manipulation, when Marty goes back through time downtown, there's a bum on the bench. And that bum is a porn star. That's right. He's a porn star in real life. They call him Red the Bum. And he was in the 1973 porno called Orgy American Style, which is, in fact, the porno on the marquee downtown. Now, I'm not going to be the last to say this, but Hollywood is full of weirdos, full of sexual impropriety and deviancies. That's why, like, Harvey Weinstein's a thing, right? I'm not saying everyone in Hollywood's rotten and does this sort of thing. I'm just saying it seems to be at a much higher clip than the average population. Or maybe not. Maybe all job occupations are this way, but I don't think so. I think that they've got a lot of weird shit going on between Hollywood and DC and the politicians. The power structures here, okay? They're into some weird stuff. And this film, as wholesome as I believed it was, is a demonstration of that fact. Next, let's get into Gnosticism and the Gnostic themes of Back to the Future. Now, to preface this section, I want to talk about how the Gnostic system is demonstrated in many works of art and entertainment. You probably aren't even aware of it unless you're into this particular subject. Films like The Truman Show, that's all about Gnosticism. Westworld, the TV series on HBO that I did an entire analysis post and video on YouTube, it's all in there. Same thing. Which again, you could tie into many of these themes that we've been talking about with the occult. There's a picture I just posted on my Instagram at Isaac Weishaupt. Follow. And it's from Carl Jung's book, Flying Saucers. It's about a spiritual wanderer finding another world outside of the imprisoned one that he is in. All of these people have this belief, this core belief, this Neoplatonic belief that there is a truth buried right beneath the surface and that our current world is full of illusion. That's why they believe in ritual magic. And it all comes from Gnosticism, which is a system that interprets Christianity and Jesus Christ and his teachings in terms of ancient esoteric doctrines and this metaphysical world. Now, Westworld, they use this labyrinth to demonstrate this initiation. The Man in Black is being initiated through the labyrinth. This was a tradition found in many ancient cultures, American Indians, Hindus, Egyptians, Greeks. And the idea was that the pathways were symbolic for the initiate and their, he or she's relentless pursuit to find the truth at the center. You can see this with like the Greek labyrinth of Crete. Same thing. And we see this in the film because Marty, he, right when he travels back in time to 1955. He drives away from the scene of the barn crash, and he says, it's all a dream. It's a very intense dream.
All right, okay, McFly. Get a grip on yourself. It's all a dream. It's just a very intense dream.
Again, Gnosticism it talks about this Maya or illusion world. It's all about the illusory experience that we're being trapped in. And when he drives away, where does he stop? He stops at the Lion Estates. The Lion Estates are being built, where the lion is symbolic for the demiurge. Talking about Gnosticism here, where in the Gnostics, they believe that this evil force called the demiurge created the earth and the world that we live in. Not God, but this evil force called the demiurge. And it has a lot to do with like the material aspects, and anyways, they represent it with the lion. The lion head is depicted on, it'll be a serpent's body or whatever. And the lion represents the warden patrolling the prisoners on this prison planet. That's why you'll see the lion head in a lot of Gnostic symbolism. So again, we see it on the film with the Lion Estates, where Marty lives. He lives in the prison. And he makes it out. He makes it out of the prison of the Lion Estates, and his job as the Luciferian character is to shed the light and to tell the other prisoners the way out, which we'll get into later. Now, when he goes back in time to 1955, he gets hit by the car and he goes into his mom's house, Lorraine, and they talk about Uncle Joey. He's a baby at that time, because you recall the beginning of the film, Uncle Joey is behind bars, and 1985 mom drops the cake on the table and says Joey didn't make parole again. Apparently he's in prison. So back in 1955, Joey's a baby and he's in the crib, and the mom says that how he cries every time they let him out, so they just put him back in. And this again is veiled commentary for this idea that humans can't handle being free.
Then come in here to dinner. Now let's see, you already know Lorraine. This is Milton, this is Sally, that's Toby, and over there in the playpen is little baby Joey.
So you're my Uncle Joey. Better get used to these bars, kid.
What? Yes, Joey just loves being in his playpen. He cries whenever we take him out, so we just leave him in there all the time. Well, Marty, I hope you like meatloaf.
They're comfortable being imprisoned on this prison planet. This American experiment, by the way, I just did an interview with a journalist who's doing some kind of project on secret societies. I try to get some more info out of him, but I don't know, he's not giving me any, which gives me not the warm and fuzziest. Like, might be a hack job. Your boy might be looking bad here real soon in a high-profile magazine. But anyways, he did an interview, and I talked about the Manly P. Hall Secret Destiny of America, how Ronald Reagan was into this occultism nonsense. Don't believe the alt-right when they talk about Ronald Reagan being so awesome. Not really a Christian as much as they want to pretend he was. And which is fine. Like, I don't condemn that. I don't give a shit. But like, the conservatives want to pretend like he was this wholesome apple pie guy, and he was into some occult stuff. Manly P. Hall, he would recite a lot of his doctrines in public speeches. But anyways, this American experiment is the alchemical great work. They want to see if we can handle the true freedom, or if we should be enslaved. And I don't know how it's turning out, but man might be pretty comfortable being imprisoned. Especially if we start banning free speech. start taking the rights away. But anyways, Back to the Future, Uncle Joey, he's in the crib, he's in prison. It's a commentary that humans don't really want to be free when his mom says that every time they let him out, he cries. He just wants to go back in. The man wants to be in the prison. Okay, now, the alchemical process. This is one of the most interesting aspects that I found on this film that I haven't heard anyone talk about yet. Now, I have seen, like I talked about earlier, the Back to the Future 9/11 analysis where they talk about how Marty was, the film was basically showing you that 9/11 was going to happen. It predicts it. It was very intriguing. I liked it a lot. I thought they did a good job, whoever that person was. Kudos. But in the film, I noticed that, so Marty arrives, we're talking about the very beginning of the film, 1985. He arrives at the Twin Pines Mall at 115, and you visibly see it kick over to 116, which, you know, very visibly in reverse, that's 9/11. Okay. Then, just a couple minutes later, when Doc Brown's talking about the dog traveling through time, he says, he talked about the stopwatch, and you see it click over from 118 to 119. Again, 9/11. So again, I'll reemphasize the point that the Twin Towers and 9/11 was an alchemical process. That was a public initiation. It's a mass ritual because they took the twin pillars, brought them down, and they raised up the one world tower, the single pillar. In Kabbalah, you see the two pillars on the side, and the idea is to reconcile the opposites, and that creates a new pillar up the center. This is the middle pillar of consciousness. The left and right hand paths are the pillar of severity and the pillar of mercy, but the pillar of consciousness is the evolved form up the center that reaches to the heavens, on the different Sephiroth on the Kabbalistic tree of life. Now this is, again, we see the 9 to 11 is jumping from the 9th Sephiroth to the 11th. The Sephiroth, there's actually 10 Sephiroth on the Tree of Life, 10 spiritual journeys that the initiate can take, but there's a hidden Daoth in the center. That's what I talked about in the Star Wars conspiracy. It's this sort of going up the path up the middle, the shortcut through. That's the abyss that Crowley talked about with Corone Zone and all this kind of stuff. And to skip from the 9th to the 11th is important symbolically. That's how Freeman Fly, the great Freeman Fly, predicted 9/11. You can listen to his show. I've been on there a few times, but he talks about this sometimes with the 9/11 thing. So to jump from the 9 to 11 is very symbolic for the Illuminati. In Doc Brown's lab, you can clearly see the Kabbalistic Tree of Life on the board behind Marty McFly. Now, to push this a little bit further in the film, should you believe that this was just simple coincidence, the Doc Brown talks about the farmer, Otis. That's the guy who, when Marty travels back in time, he runs into the barn. And Doc Brown says that he was having this crazy idea to breed pine trees. And if you really think about what that statement is saying, it doesn't really make sense. Why is that so crazy? Why is there such emphasis on this sentence in the film? Why does Doc Brown give a particular look about this?
Things have certainly changed around here. I remember when this was all farmland as far as the eye could see. Old man Peabody owned all of this. He had this crazy idea about breeding pine trees.
Because it's a reference meant for the audience to really soak in. It's a reference to breeding the masses and their pineal glands, trying to open up the pineal glands of the masses, the third eye, trying to open up this, inner awakening enlightenment. Because if you look at the history of the occult, they believe that we evolved and the pineal gland evolved inward, and that was used to originally make contact with the divine and the gods and all this stuff. So to practice these Dionysian rituals is to make the pineal gland work in order to, spiritualize the human body somehow. So when Doc Brown says it's a crazy idea to breed pine trees, he's saying that this film is a breeding tool for the masses for awakening. And what's curious is that Marty, when he travels back to 1955, he runs over the single pine tree on the property. But then when he returns in 1985, the mall is now named Lone Pine Mall because the farmer, Otis, wasn't able to breed the pine trees to make the Twin Pines Mall. Again, it's the same symbology that we see from 9/11 and the Twin Towers. It's the two trees, the Pillar of Severity and the Pillar of Mercy and the Pillar of Severity, and reconciling the opposites to make the Pillar of Consciousness. It's the same thing over and over. When will you wake up? Sorry, that's my that was my Bill Cooper impersonation. I've been listening to a lot of old episodes of Hour of the Time. But seriously, though, it's what this is showing us. 9/11 as the mass ritual. 2 becomes 1. Reconciliation of the opposites. Alchemical processes. Marty is reconciling the opposites of the twin pillars from 2 to 1. Then, if you still didn't get it, if you still don't believe me, look at when Doc Brown has explained to Marty in his lab how they're going to make this thing go back through time. He's going to make it go back through time, entering a new dimension, a new evolved state of being through the twin pillars, the twin columns. He goes back through a new dimension, through an awakening, a mystical journey, which is exactly what happened at the Solomon's Temple. That's why in the Freemason temples you see the Boaz and Jachin twin pillars. The initiate would enter through and be entering into a mystical state of being. Then, if you still doubted me, which I don't know why you would, I wouldn't steer you wrong. Look at the end. Look at the end of the film. At the crescendo, Marty drives right through the twin pillars. One is white and one is black, very clearly. One is Boaz, one is Jachin. He travels on this mystical journey of enlightenment through time by going through the twin pillars. Again, the film is an alchemical journey of this Luciferian character, which takes me to my last and final topic: the Luciferian illumination and enlightenment of Marty McFly. Marty McFly, again, we'll look at the name again real quick, and I realize this is a little bit of a stretch too, but we're going to do it because that's what we're all about, is opening up the minds to consider some of the themes being presented. Okay, McFly. Oh, there's the dogs, everyone. Say hi to the dogs. The fly is symbolic of Lucifer and the satanic influences through, Lord of the Flies, Beelzebub. I talked about this in the Westworld analysis that I did, which you really got to see. There was a lot of good commentaries that I've got from that video. A lot of people were talking about this. Steve Quayle, you might know who that is. He had posted it on his website. But anyways, the fly is symbolic of the awakening through the Luciferian doctrine. That's what we saw in Westworld. The fly is always crawling at the left of the all-seeing eye, which is generally on the left all-seeing eye, left-hand path. It's all right there if you know what you're looking for, my friends. McFly, he is the Luciferian character. He is the rebel angel. If you watch the film from this perspective, you will see it. The principal basically says, he's got a problem with Marty McFly.
Hearty stuff for you, Miss Parker. And one for you, McFly. I believe that makes 4 in a row. Now, let me give you Nichols with a free advice, young man. This so-called Dr. Brown is dangerous. He's a real nutcase. You hang around with him, you're going to end up in big trouble.
Oh, yes, sir.
You've got a real attitude problem, McFly. You're a slacker. You remind me of your father when he went here. He was a slacker, too.
Can I go now, Mr. Strickland?
I notice your band is on the roster for the dance auditions after school today. Why even bother, McFly? You don't have a chance. You're too much like your old man. No McFly ever amounted to anything in the history of Hill Valley.
Yeah, well, history is going to change.
He's the rebel. You know, Marty's going to bang this hot chick. He's, you know, doing what he's not supposed to.
Wouldn't it be great? Take that truck up to the lake. Throw a couple of sleeping bags in the back. Lie out underneath the stars.
Stop it.
What?
Does your mom know about tomorrow night?
Ah, get out of town. My mom thinks I'm going camping with the guys. Well, Jennifer, my mother would freak out if she knew I was going up there with you, and I get the standard lecture about how she never did that kind of stuff when she was a kid. I mean, look, I think the woman was born a nun.
She's just trying to keep you respectable.
Well, she's not doing a very good job.
Terrible.
He's telling his dad to toughen up because his dad's just a big old puss.
I know what you're going to say, son. And you're right. You're right. But, Biff just happens to be my supervisor, and I'm afraid I'm just not very good at confrontations. Get the car, Dad.
He's a musician with the rock and roll stuff, just like Lucifer. And if nothing else, he's associated with the symbolism of the lightning bolt. Let me walk you through this, okay? We first get a hint of this when you look at the language being used during the process where Doc Brown is talking to Marty about the DeLorean and the time traveling. There were a lot of references to Jesus Christ, hell, and the devil in a very short period of time. And then to bring it home, Doc Brown punches in he says, "You want to witness the birth of Christ into the DeLorean." Now, these are the only times you hear these kinds of terms throughout the movie. Christ, the devil, hell. It's all in this short span of time.
The temporal displacement occurred exactly 1:20 a.m. in 0 seconds!
Ah, Jesus Christ. Jesus Christ, Doc, you disintegrated Einstein.
Calm down, Marty. I didn't disintegrate anything. The molecular structure of both Einstein and the car are completely intact.
Where the hell are they?
The appropriate question is, when the hell are they? You see, Einstein has just become the world's first time traveler. I sent him into the future. 1 minute into the future, to be exact. Einstein, you little devil! Einstein's clock is exactly one. First, you turn the time circuits on. This readout tells you where you're going, this one tells you where you are, this one tells you where you were. You input your destination time on this keypad. Say you want to see the signing of the Declaration of Independence. Or witness the birth of Christ.
And then Doc says he's going to travel, right? After Einstein goes through time, he's going 25 years in the future because he wants to see the progress of mankind. He wants to see the evolution of consciousness that Lucifer, Marty McFly, will be providing.
The future. That's where you're going.
That's right. 25 years into the future. I've always dreamed of seeing the future, looking beyond my years, seeing the progress of mankind.
Because Marty's going back in time, remember? He's going to go back in time, and he wants to see the progress of mankind. That is what this is all about. They believe their great work, their duty, is to evolve us into their true belief system of Luciferianism. Doc Brown is a consort to Lucifer, the devil. So then we find out, should you not believe all this yet, that lightning is the only thing that is capable to produce the 1.21 gigawatts as it should be pronounced. Because remember, this is back in 1950s when he travels back in time, so the nuclear plutonium isn't available. So the savior to this thing is the lightning bolt, Lucifer, represented by lightning. When in the Bible it says he fell like lightning from the heavens as the fallen angel, and Lucifer becomes Satan. And I know we could go into a whole tangent. I'm sure, I'm sure there's enough flack I'll get for this. I'm sure there's plenty of occultist experts out there that could tell me, well, Lucifer isn't Satan, it's two different people. But that's what my good old-fashioned Orthodox study Bible tells me. By God, that's what it tells me. That's what I'm going with. And like, to me, it seems like people are splitting hairs when they come at me with that argument of Lucifer isn't really Satan. Yeah, I kind of think he is. I mean, I'm not the expert on the subject. I've been trying to compile a thorough understanding of it to really understand what the differences are. Because me and Freeman even kind of went at it a little bit on his show when I went on his show talking about it. But in fact, I'm gonna try to get a couple of cultists on this show to talk to me about this. But I know that puts me in a weird stance because half of you is out there believing the occult doctrine and half of you are pro-Christian kind of people. So, but I think, hey, let's just throw it out on the table. The truth will stand, right? But anyways, lightning is the savior. Lucifer saves the day with the 1.21 gigawatts.
She's crazy about me. Look at this. Look what you wrote here, Doc. I mean, that says it all. Doc, you're my only hope.
Marty, I'm sorry, but the only power source capable of generating 1.21 gigawatts of electricity is a bolt of lightning.
What did you say?
A bolt of lightning. Unfortunately, you never know when or where it's ever going to strike.
We do now.
This is it. This is the answer.
Then we see back in 1955, there's this whole sequence. Let's zoom back out. There's this whole sequence that Marty goes back in time and he evolves all these dumb people from the 50s. He is the Luciferian Prometheus character giving the fire to the dummies. He enlightens the kids on skateboarding because remember when Biff, so back in the 50s, he goes to the diner and, he showing off for his mom and, taunts Biff. And then he takes these kids' little skateboard, makes a skateboard from these kids' toys, and he gets away from Biff on the skateboard. So basically he invents skateboarding right then and there. He enlightens the kids into this new thing. He is the apple. He's the serpent, the tree of knowledge, right? Then when he takes his mom to the enchantment end of the sea dance, look at the hood of his car. It's a 1948. The hell is it called? A Parkman or a Parkway or something like that? Packard. It's a Packard. Anyway, you take this 1948 Packard and it's got what appears to me to be a winged angel on the hood. Again, it's the symbology of the fallen angel. And inside this car is where he smooches with his mom and, the incest scene that everyone seemed to think was okay back in the 80s. But then, George comes in, actually Biff comes over and then George saves the day, but then Marty runs inside and he gets locked in the trunk from the band, which, by the way, why were the keys in the trunk? Doesn't make sense. Whatever. Just a movie. Just a movie trying to hijack your brain. But anyways, Marty goes in and he's on the stage and he's playing Earth Angel with the band. That's the scene where George is dancing with Lorraine and then some jokester comes in and try to break it up. And, and Marty's disappearing from existence because George is going to lose Lorraine. But then he gets her back. But they're playing Earth Angel. The angel on Earth, the fallen angel. I realize the song Earth Angel isn't about Lucifer. But maybe it is, right? Isn't that what the angel on Earth is? The fallen angel? I don't know. Maybe I'm getting a little too deep in the weeds on that one. I don't think so. I think in context of all of this other stuff we've been looking at, there's some traction to that. Now the band name is Mary and the Starlighters. The Starlighters. They are lighting the star. The symbolism of star lighting is illuminating, which we see from the Semiramis goddess back, the Statue of Liberty. It's the Illuminati, the illuminated ones. That is what the symbolism of the star or the fire represents. Prometheus giving the fire to the masses. So Marvin Berry and the Starlighters. Now Marty, while he's on stage with them, he invents rock and roll. Again, he enlightens the masses. He plays Johnny B. Good of all songs. And during the song, Marvin Berry calls his brother Chuck Berry, who was the guy who actually invented rock and roll. Okay. Now rock and roll, not to sound too fundamentalist Christian-y, but rock and roll is associated with this sort of demonic influence, okay? And the song he plays, Johnny Be Good, and I read from a quote here, probably, this is the quote I read, probably the first song ever written about how much money a musician could make by playing the guitar. And now when I hear that, I think about the origin story of coming from nothing to something, which is what you heard from Robert Johnson, and the Crossroads. Again, reference my books, The Dark Path or Sacrifice Magic Behind the Mic. That's more hip-hop themed. But it's this idea that, Robert Johnson talked about, there was some actual proof that Robert Johnson wasn't that good at playing guitar. He said he went to the Crossroads and made a deal with the devil, the Faustian bargain. In order to play the guitar well, he sold his soul. And there were some interviews with some people that were around back in that time with him that confirmed it. That he didn't know how to play the guitar that well, but then he came back one day and all of a sudden he did. So that's what Johnny B. Good's about. It's about how much money a musician could make playing the guitar. They could do the Faustian bargain. And when the song's over, Marty says, you guys aren't ready for this yet, apparently, because they all stand there and just kind of staring at him like they weren't really into it, right? Marty's like, I guess you guys aren't ready for this, but your kids are going to love it.
I guess you guys aren't ready for that yet. But your kids are going to love it.
He's talking about this new age, the Aeon of Horus, this Aquarian age of, from the 60s and 70s, which is when the real pivotal shifts happened. The shifts in consciousness happened that started to embrace this new age line of thinking. Now, right or wrong, I'm just saying that's when it happened, okay? The influence of Aleister Crowley and the sex, drugs, and rock and roll movement only started around that time frame. And again, you got to look at the Dionysian rituals. That's what this was all about. I get it. Like, I listen to this crap too. Like, I'm into rock music and rap music and all this. But the real truth is, those dorky ass fundamental youth pastors are kind of right when they talk about how this stuff could be taken the wrong way. And I think the key is to just understand its influence, its capability for influence. You don't have to stop listening to this stuff. Just know and become aware that there is, in fact, a basis for all of these things back in ritual of rhythm and drumming and dancing. These were all ways that they used to make contact with higher consciousness, with the gods. Now, if you're just listening to the music and you don't think it'll affect you that much, then go for it, right? But just know that there can be some influence there. So that's what the tale's about. It's about Marty as the Luciferian fallen angel who comes to Earth and enlightens the masses as the rebel, okay? He's the rebel archetype. He's the devil. He's quite literally the devil. That is what the rebellion archetype is all about. It's about embracing the antinomian and the other and the adversary. And that's what he does in this film. Trying to bang his mom. He's, showing people rock and roll. He invents rock and roll. And most of all, he's associated with the symbol of the lightning bolt, which is also the symbol you see in the pentagram logo for the high priest of the Church of Satan, Anton LaVey. Puts the lightning bolt down the center. Now, that is a very high-level overview of Back to the Future and the Illuminati. I am going to post some images and video for this on YouTube that you can see the clips for yourself, see the images for yourself. You can go to IlluminatiWatcher.com for that, or go to my YouTube Illuminati Watcher 1 channel. Hopefully it still exists by the time you hear this. I've been getting a lot of flack from them. Yeah, they're gunning for the conspiracy folks. I'll tell you, they do not want the messages out there. They are patrolling the minds now at this point. It's very 1984 around this piece, right? If you want to support the cause, if you want to get all of my bonus content for the podcast, early access, no commercials, free copy of my book, The Dark Path, go to patreon.com/Illuminati Watcher. That is the funding process for the content creators at this point, because the powers that be have blocked many paths for that to happen. I've got a lot of good shows on there. You'll get a lot of bonus content from those shows. Sometimes I do free book giveaways as well. You'll get all kinds of bonus stuff like that. So I want to thank you for listening. If you like the Conspiracy Theories and Unpopular Culture podcast, go to iTunes and leave a review. I'm also on Stitcher and Podbean at this point, so you can leave reviews on any of them.
Yeah, pull it, Joey. Alright, so I'll probably go into a little bit more deeper stuff if no one joins, or if you do join, I'll probably just go into it anyway. And there's another one of his that I think I might want to show. Even if you don't like the stuff, it is at least entertaining. And if you don't like the stuff, well, you don't have to watch. You don't have to join in. This is a free speech arena. You can talk about whatever you want, as long as you're not talking over anyone else. This is a topic at hand. There's plenty of days, more times than this, where we do free and open topic nights where anything goes. Then we do talk about just topics that I start, which can be anywhere from revealing Bill Cooper's talks, which anyone can watch on their own. You don't have to watch it on my channel. And the funny thing is, yeah, there's a big fight about free speech. And if you don't like conspiracy theories and you pretty much prefer listening to mainstream media saying, conspiracy theorists shouldn't have free speech because they are manipulating the masses, which is funny because the ones who are actually manipulating the masses are the mainstream media. But they don't want you to listen to anyone who's a conspiracy theorist because they're crazy. And you know how many people listen to the conspiracy theorists? I mean, not that much. Not that much. Less people listen to conspiracy theories than they do mainstream media. People would rather turn on Rachel Maddow than they would on anyone who just talks about conspiracy theories. Because conspiracy theories, we're the irrational ones. We're the ones who don't want to look at the sources. We're the ones who don't show you the evidence because the evidence is withheld. Yeah, we're the conspiracy theorists because we want evidence, and so we could form a more valid story as to what exactly happened. But when we don't have any information, well, we have to just kind of assume. And I talked about the assumptions a long time ago. Professions and sciences, you know, you do everything right. You run your controlled experiments and everything looks right, but then the only thing that happens is, it doesn't work in the end. So what do? You look at the assumptions and you go, you know, I think the assumptions aren't correct. That's when we look at not the evidence, but the story that's been given to us, to the public, and it doesn't add up. And so we go back and we go, hey government, hey secret society people, hey elitists, this doesn't add up. Can you give us more information? And they go, sure, go ahead and submit a FOIA request that we have to have a Freedom of Information Act just to get information from the government. And then when we do, it's all redacted. And we were like, well, that doesn't help us at all. We want, just give it to us unredacted. And they go, no, because you know, there are people living today that might get harassed or killed for, you know, being guilty of treason or corruption or, you know, crimes, and we don't want that because they're probably in positions of power. And they're part of our group, so we don't want them in trouble. You know, just like where, you know, they'll have little vigils for pedophiles or amoebophiles, however way Snork wants to call them. And, you know, they'll serve 15 months in prison rather than being in prison for the rest of their life. Or at least use the death penalty on these motherfuckers. Actually, kid fuckers, but you know what I mean. Here we go. Let's go into some deeper, more, I don't know, more. Let's see. Here we go.
So why is it Voluspo has been interpreted as a prophecy of Armageddon and a creation myth? Let's find out. The Christians who rediscovered the Norse mythology in the 19th century felt that in order to be a proper mythology, it had to have two things: a myth about the Armageddon and a creation myth. Therefore, when they looked into the Norse mythology, they interpreted Voluspo as being just that. When I wrote this book in 1998, I kind of parroted that scholarly idea of Voluspo being a Ragnarok and a creation myth. But I grew wiser. So when I wrote this book some years later, I had realized, and I prove here in this book, that Voluspo is not a creation myth, and Ragnarok is not about Armageddon. Ironically, this one is my best mythology book of these three, and this is actually just a role-playing game. But if you go to the religion or the high festival section of this book, you will find a much more correct and proper interpretation of Voluspo, or what you can find in Voluspo. As I show in this book, Voluspo is not at all a creation myth. Also, Ragnarok is not at all about Armageddon. It's a yearly event that we celebrate today as the New Year's Eve. And in a more metaphysical sense, it's something the kids had to go through ritually in order to be reborn, which of course is exactly what the deities are in Ragnarok. They die so that they can be reborn. They are killed so that they can come back, return. The reason why it's called Voluspo, which means the prophecy of the sorceress, you could say, is that the sorceress were midwives. And when a child is born, the placenta it comes out, and you can actually look at the placenta and you can see whether or not the child will have health issues. You can actually diagnose future diseases of the child. You can find its weaknesses and its strength. by looking at how the placenta is. If it's thick, if it's thin, if it's shaped like this or that and so forth. And that's why these midwives were called prophets. Vulva means a round staff, which of course is what the fairies use in the fairy tales. And in Christian times, the fairies, that would be the midwives, were accused of being responsible for these weaknesses that the child would have. But in reality, they just were able to predict the weaknesses of the child and the strengths because they could study the placenta. Völuspá is describing a reincarnation process. And the Ragnarok described in Völuspá is part of that. It's a part of the reincarnation of the gods in us. The concept of a creation myth is in itself extremely unpagan and extremely Judeo-Christian, because in Judeo-Christianity the worldview is linear. It has a start and a finish, an end, creation and Armageddon. However, in pagan worldviews it's circular, and as you know, a circle has no beginning and no end. There is no creation myth in any pagan mythologies. There is no Armageddon myth in any pagan mythology. Those who believe that simply don't understand the mythology that they're reading.
Halo then sire, 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 halo then sire.
Now, I probably wouldn't. I mean, I like what he has to propose and his thoughts, through perspective. I'll need to watch more of his videos, although I probably don't follow exactly in his mindset of the. Yeah, I don't like religion. I might even hate most religions. But to annihilate all the religions, I don't know. I don't think I'm there. Not yet, maybe. Maybe not ever. Who knows? You never know in life. But yeah, it's always good to see the perspective of others, and that's kind of the great thing about the internet age and freedom of speech, being able to share not just news of what's actually happening around you locally or in your house or whatever, just outside your house, whatever's happening. You know, that's how news gets around. It's like, hey, something's happening. Okay, let's write it down. Okay, well, you go visit someone, they go, hey, what's been going on? You go, well, look, I wrote it all down. Someone else could have something different, but who gets to decide which one is going to be written down in the history books? Or maybe none of them. Maybe they don't want any of that stuff there. Also, beliefs, views. Yeah, you're going to have probably a lot of views where you're going to hate. You're going to want to annihilate. Hell, if I'm going to annihilate anyone, it would probably be the corrupt. The ones that were in power. Because they shouldn't be corrupt. Yeah, I'll annihilate them. I'm all for it. If they want to go ahead and go to prison or whatever just for their crimes, if they admit it, whatever, sure, go ahead. If not, yeah, you're gonna die, buddy. All you corrupt motherfuckers. But that'll be soon, hopefully sooner than later. Yeah, wasn't my old friend in the Navy used to say, you know, well, I was with so it was pretty I didn't really think about it, but I hung out in the in Great Lakes, Illinois, with 2 Puerto Ricans and a black guy, and so there's an Asian guy in that. So we used to just go around and have a good time. I learned merengue. I'm horrible at merengue. I think I got a little bit better after I kind of learned. Anyways, segued. A friend of mine, a black fella, said, "Hey, shipmate, you shouldn't do that." And shipmate would be like yelling back and cursing him, "Man your own business." And you know, he's verbally abusing and making this other shipmate gal cry. And this is on the base. And then so we kind of kept going, and my black friend says, "You know, he'll get his. Let's just go." So we're like, okay. And then one of the Puerto Rican guys goes, and I love this guy. He goes, No. He's not gonna get his. If he's gonna get his, he's getting it now. He's not gonna get it later. And so he went up to the guy and said, "Hey, this is not how you behave. This is not how you're supposed to be." And it was great just seeing him step up. You know, he didn't leave it for someone else to clean up the mess or make the world better. He just went ahead and did it. And it didn't matter to him what happened, what the consequences are. It's take action rather than inaction. What's that quote? The only thing for evil to triumph, I know I'm abusing that quote, is for good men to do nothing. So can you be a good man if you do nothing in a world where evil acts occur and you just say, you know what, they'll get theirs? But thing is, when no one acts, how are they going to get theirs? You have to act. Otherwise, they'll just keep doing it. I mean, it's just like if you have bad behavior. I mean, most of you guys are parents. Most of you guys, all of you guys are sons or daughters of parents. And if you did something wrong, you did something bad, and you know it's something that you wouldn't have done to you, and your parents didn't really punish you or give you negative reinforcement on it, would you do it again? Did you do it again? Most likely yes, because it's psychologically how we associate what to do in society. If we see people, bullying others, and we see kids telling teachers, "Hey, this person's bullying me," and nothing happens, they know that the bullies, they have free reign. So it takes someone to step up to the bullies because the teachers aren't doing anything. The parents might try, but they'll get arrested if they even try to interfere. I mean, look, you're gonna verbally or physically abuse a minor who's hitting on your own kid, you're gonna go to jail. Fuck that. If a kid is gonna hit my kid, I'm gonna hit the kid back. That's me. You guys can arrest me if that's the case, but yeah, I'm gonna hit the kid back if no one's gonna do anything. Well, first I'm gonna have my kids fight back, and if they just keep getting beat up and no one does anything about it at the school or the other parents, yeah, I'm gonna step in. That's just the way it is. I'm the culmination of it. I'm a guy who grew up getting beat up every day. Pain doesn't affect me very much. I could get hit all day. Sometimes it feels good. That's how messed up it is. Pain feels good. I have my wife hit me, punch me, wherever, and it just feels like a nice massage until her fists start hurting. I don't want that for my kids. All right. Looks like Man to Talk with James is on. There's really not much I want to talk about on my own. I don't want to bore you with more videos. If you like any of the videos, you can review back and look at them and subscribe to their channels, watch some of their other content. At least you get a broader perspective of symbolism. I think that's something that you need to learn, because if you don't learn it, well, you're just one of the sheep, I guess they call it. What is it? I don't know. There's a lot of terms for it. There's terms for the occult, the mystery schools, the secret societies where they call all the sheep. They call a specific word. Yeah, don't be one of them. You're here now because you guys aren't that. Don't just stop. You gotta keep going because there's more stuff about learning in the world. And when the people try to limit what you can know, that's not freedom. And we gotta fight for the freedoms that we have, or we're just gonna have it taken away from us one by one. And no one steps up. Well, we're in another enslavement age. How do you like that? We already are, most of us. Anyways, that's it for tonight. See you guys in James's channel. And if you guys don't know where James's channel is, let me go ahead and link that to you guys in the chat, so you guys can go over there. He does a monologue, kind of like what I'm doing. It's, of course, I'm not doing a monologue whatever on purpose, just because no one's wanting to join. So no one wants to join, why talk? I mean, I already talked for however long this is, 2.5 hours. Holy smokes, 2.5 hours of this. And it's an open session where you could come in and no one comes in. Can't communicate one way. We need to start communicating with each other, not just a one-way type of conversation. Anyways, I'll see you guys later. I'll see you guys at James.